Welcome to the Social Impact Journal, the podcast meeting founders, innovators, and experts driving change in our world. How can nonprofits increase their visibility and share their initiatives? We're about to find out in episode 23 of the Social Impact Journal, where I discuss with David Girling, the Associate Professor for Media and Global Development at the University of East Anglia. This is a Social Impact Journal, a global development show where I talk to the innovators and experts driving social change in our world. Episodes are released every Monday at 9 a.m. GMT, and if you enjoy this episode, please make sure to subscribe and follow on our social media channels. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, Jack.
I'm really looking forward to this one. I think it's one of the first episodes that we're specifically looking at communications and social media for the non-profit sector. So I think before we dive into the show, it would be great just to hear a background of what exactly you do.
Yeah, what do? I do lots of things, Jack. I'm an academic at the University of East Anglia, so in the School of Global Development, and I teach on media and global development. I'm also course director for the Global Development Management course. But I consider myself to be a pracademic. I've been a practitioner most of my career, and I've worked on lots of digital projects. I've worked in marketing and communications. That's actually my background, marketing, communications, PR. And many years ago, 12 years, 13 years ago, I think it was when I started this role, I was really interested in how social media could help development in many different ways, from the Arab Spring and other revolutions to how NGOs can use social media to communicate with different audiences, have a two-way conversation, etc. So that's sort of my interest in social media for development. But yeah, mostly I'm from a marketing communications background.
Awesome. I'm really excited because we work with a lot of community-based organizations, and the majority of them don't have any social media channels, maybe just Facebook. And it's so important to be able to connect with different audiences, as you say. So yeah. Most nonprofits are likely to have a very tight budget for marketing. So is there any free tools that they can use for content design? Because I know that's quite a challenge to have unique content design regularly to keep engagement with audiences.
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of tools out there. The first thing I'm going to say is that social media isn't free. Lots of people say that social media is free. Yes, it's free to set up an account on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter, etc. X, not Twitter anymore. But it does take time to produce content, as you say. And so it is important to use some of the free tools out there. One of the ones that I've used most over the years is Canva, especially if sort of trying to produce some stills for Instagram, for example, or even some basic animations. Canva has a free option, but you can also subscribe and have other sort of brand elements that are added, so you can add your own font and etc. And so that everybody standardizes stuff. But if you're trying to do something quite basic to begin with, then Canva's a good place to start. There are other tools. There are lots of other tools. Hootsuite, for example, I've used in the past. But then, getting images, there's Pexels, for example, which is a database that uses Creative Commons that you can use images from. But yeah, I need to reiterate that although there are free tools out there, it's important to actually invest some time into setting up these social media channels and understanding from your perspective how long it's going to take and what you want as a return on investment. It's not just about the free tools.
Yeah, for sure. No, I've used Canva for a lot of things, especially on national days when you can just use the templates and it's very quick and easy to do something. But I know they also have Canva for non-profits. So you need to be registered with the national board or the local government, but you can get Canva for free, the premium version, as well. As I know at Rural Inclusion we have that, but I'm not sure about the specific eligibility criterias. What about ChatGPT? Have you seen any value with writing posts on that?
Chat GPT. But I think my example that I use of Chat GPT is I'm actually doing a piece of research at the moment. And the other day I thought, I wonder if it could write my introduction for me. It's all about charity advertising. So I typed in a few different things. No. Typed in a bit more. No. In the end, I'd have been better spending that half an hour to an hour actually writing my own introduction than playing around with Chat GPT. But saying that, my daughter, for example, she recently applied for a scholarship, and she used ChatGPT as a first stage in creating that application, and then she's very good at editing and went from there. So I think it depends on your skills. It depends on how good you are at using AI. For me, I still think that it's got a long way to go, but yeah, sure. Watch this space because it's going to change very, very rapidly.
Yeah, no, sure. I read something about, not about social media, but for nonprofits in grant writing and how to, even for spelling checks on proposals and things like that, it can be a huge help. So each social media platform, of course, has a different audience and a different way to grow following. So what would you advise for a small nonprofit if they're looking at which platforms to prioritize and which platform to use? I guess it depends on who they want to partner with and who they want to raise funds from. But if you can maybe talk us through the major platforms and which type of audiences we're more likely to see on those platforms.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that you've already sort of summarized it, really. It depends who your audience is. And this is what I say when I'm speaking to students about any kind of communication strategy. Who is your audience? And I repeat that probably 20 times in a 2-hour lecture, because it's pointless to if you don't know who your audience is, how on earth can you create a communication strategy? It's so important. So I think it really depends on your organization as well. So first you need to define your audience. Are you looking at funders? Are you looking at policymakers? Is it other NGOs in sort of the country that you're working in, or is it other NGOs in other countries? So once you've actually defined that, it will depend. I mean, look, there's so many successful organizations that have used YouTube and TikTok to fundraise money for children's by doing, sort of breakdancing and music and all sorts of different things, fun stuff on those kind of platforms, TikTok and YouTube. There's some great examples from all over Africa, especially Uganda and Nigeria that I've seen examples. But yeah, if you want to speak directly to a civil servant or a policymaker, then you've got to be on X. I still don't like calling it X. I'd prefer to call it Twitter because that's where I was. But again, that's changing. I mean, look at it. I mean, I get really, really frustrated with X now because they're working on the algorithms. They've changed it a lot since Elon Musk has been there. And so I actually haven't quite worked that out yet. So is it better to move to Mastodon, which is new and is cleaner? And could that be the future? But again, depending on who your audience is and what country they're in, then Facebook might be the best place to be. I don't personally use Facebook anymore at all. But I know that a lot of people do, especially older generations. So again, think of the age demographic as well as the audience you're trying to reach. Instagram, absolutely fantastic if you've got something visual to share. But if you haven't got anything visual, there's nothing worse, in my view, than seeing a boardroom meeting with loads of people in their 50s and 60s looking really bored in a board meeting, and then they do a photo afterwards, and it's not even in focus. Do you know what I mean? It's like, what's the point of that photo? Show something exciting, show something that will engage people, show something that the work that you're doing, why is it successful? Why is it worth funding? So you've really got to think about all of the different strategies that you want really. What are you trying to communicate to these different people? So for me, I would definitely only start on one or two platforms. And depending on who those people are I'm trying to reach, I probably would start with X and unfortunately Facebook. But Instagram is what I prefer because I'm a visual person, but it doesn't mean that your audience are visual. So yeah, always make sure that you understand how to reach the people you want to.
What value do you see in LinkedIn within the development community?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is absolutely massively important, and I think it's growing. In fact, it's something that in the School of Global Development, I used to manage their social media channels, and I've seen a real shift to LinkedIn. If I wanted to speak to alumni, for example, of our department, or I want to speak to placement organisers, etc., or I want to speak to other peers within academia, then I would use LinkedIn. So it'd be the same for somebody working in a community-based organisation, NGO, etc. I think there's real value in networking. You know, many years ago, people used to go to these networking meetings in the evening or conferences and spend a lot of money. I was speaking to somebody in the British government Department for International Development several years ago. They've changed their name now, but they were saying that the fantastic thing for them about social media, and especially LinkedIn, was that they were speaking to their counterparts at USAID and NORAD and other organizations. They weren't competing with each other, but they were sharing information, sharing what's gone well, what's not gone so well. Whereas in the past, they'd have probably spent, £1,000 flying over to somewhere in the US to attend a conference and accommodation, etc. So you can network brilliantly on LinkedIn. We met on LinkedIn, didn't we, Jack? I think. I think it's an absolutely invaluable tool. And so, yeah, a bit remiss of me to miss that out in my earlier selection of 4.
Oh, so if I'm an NGO, you don't want to have every post asking for money. You need to try and find that balance. But what's the secret ingredient to sharing project updates, having a call to action and asking for monetary or non-monetary support and other things? Is there a specific methodology that someone can follow?
I don't think there's a specific methodology because, again, it will all depend on what you're trying to communicate. But I think you've got to be showing that you're a reliable organisation. What is it that you're doing? Show the work that you're doing. What have you achieved over the last few years? What do you want to achieve? But it's also about building a network as well. So sharing other people's posts, congratulating people on the successes that they've done, coming up with slight strategies that means that you're engaging your audience in it because you're teaching them things. But then coming back to sort of your own goals, your own objectives. And as I said, showing successes. I think you've got to show that you're a credible organisation. And how do you do that? You can do that by, in the past, there was sort of annual reports, wasn't there? And they were quite tedious. Whereas they're still really, really important documents and financial statements. But there's things that you can bring out of those in short videos, with imagery as well. So it's about engaging your audience and showing that you've got value and or what's special about you, what's different about you. There are hundreds of thousands, millions of small NGOs out there. What makes you different? Why are you different?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of leveraging that reach and trying to really show why that particular NGO is different or attracting a specific audience, how can NGOs leverage volunteers in their organization to help amplify their page or possibly even social media influencers? Maybe that's on the larger scale with the international NGOs.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, the international NGOs, especially in the UK, do it absolutely brilliantly. They use a lot of social media influencers. I once introduced somebody who there's a family in Norwich where I'm from, who I think the combined 4 or 5 different YouTube channels that they have in their family is 10 to 20 million people. And so I introduced them to WaterAid, and they went out to Zambia to see the kind of work that they did. And they were fitness YouTubers, and they were talking about the importance of water and nutrition and to health, etc. So I think that, the larger NGOs have been doing this for many, many years. They're very, very successful at it. And there can be a good return. But again, it's about building a relationship. What if that actual celebrity, I mean, that's what they are, they're micro celebrities, YouTubers and TikTokers. What happens if they suddenly do something controversial, which a lot of them have? There's an endless list of controversial YouTubers and TikTokers out there. So you have to be really, really careful about that. But then I think on a smaller scale, if you make a video of somebody, and I don't know, let's say that you were at a conference and that you were interviewing you had an idea and you went around, you interview people, make sure that you tag them within your post so that they know that post has actually gone live, and that they will share that post. I mean, that seems really, really simple to do. And again, comes back to the freeness. It's quite time consuming doing that, making sure that you've got someone's Instagram tags or someone's LinkedIn tags, etc. But it's important if you want to spread awareness of your organization. And then there's the deliberate targeting of people that you think that will actually benefit your organization. So one of the organizations that I've interviewed quite a lot for a Future Learn course that we used to have on media and global development is a NGO in Kampala, Uganda, called Reach a Hand. They do a lot of they've got funding from MTV in the past and lots of different organizations. They want to spread awareness about health and HIV. So they target specific musicians, hip hop artists, etc., because they know that they've got a reach. They know that they've got influence in that area. They know that if they are commissioned to write a song about health awareness or something, that they're going to spread it to their audience, etc. I was also in Kampala 5-6 years ago when UNICEF had got the rights to John Lennon's song Imagine, and they were trying to get voices from all over the world to sing Imagine, and then they were putting it out onto an app and getting the world to sing it, and then a famous DJ, can't remember their name, was going to put it all together. And so they had 5-6 musicians, hip hop artists mainly, in Uganda. They came there. Not only did that would that have really good reach, but because they got the celebrities there, they had all of the main TV and radio channels there as well. So they were getting sort of communications in many different ways. So I think that I think you have to be really, really careful, but I think that there is a lot of scope for using celebrity ambassadors or even, as I said, just the people that you're connected with to share your stories.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's just breaking into new networks. And the way, I don't know, for LinkedIn, for example, even if I like David, your post, my whole network, is able to then see that post because of my like. I don't even need to share or to repost. So it's interesting how some of these networks, social media networks, operate and how you can get that virality quite quickly.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And many years ago, I produced a video. It wasn't in the NGO sector. It was about branding. It was about what is branding. And we targeted different blogs that were talking about branding. And what happened there was because some blog in Brazil picked it up, and that blog had loads and loads of followers. It had something like 10,000 views in one day. And this was all on YouTube. And because it had 10,000 views, it then got higher up in the search engine and it just exploded. So making a viral video, that's probably every single content provider's nightmare, where someone comes in and says, make me a viral video, because you can't make a viral video. The audience makes it go viral, but you can help by seeding it in different places and having a strategy. And especially if you can reach somebody that has 1 million followers, And there are a lot of people out there with 1 million followers these days. If they tweet about it or they post it on LinkedIn, etc., then it's just going to grow organically from there.
Yeah, no, you mentioned a Medium blog just a moment ago. So we've discussed about videos, about photos, about reports, but having a blog to have regular updates or even a newsletter for a non-profit, is that something that is still very effective, or are you seeing a shift to more of the short form content?
I think there's definitely a shift. And I've ran my own blogs before. As I said, I've got my own personal blog, Social Media for Development. I've written about 120, 150 blog posts there. But my audience is small, but it's engaged. And so I know that people, weirdly, I hear it anecdotally. I once went to a government department and they said, "Oh, it's great to meet you. I actually got this job. And in preparation for this job, I was reading your blog as preparation." I was like, "Oh, that's great to hear." Yeah. But sometimes it can be a lonely place because you don't have that interaction online. I just happened to meet this guy. So I've tended to shift away from sort of my own personal blog that maybe only has, sometimes 20 views on a blog post or 200, to other bigger platforms such as The Conversation. That's an academic platform, but if you can find a right platform where people are willing to share, where people are going on a daily basis. Huffington Post, I haven't used that for years, but does that still exist? I'm not sure. That used to be really, really popular and used to have millions of people read it every day. But not only that, can you comment on an international newspaper's website? Try and find discussions and go in and comment on them. That's worked for me in the past. When I've seen something about social media for development, I've been Googling it, I found a news article, or it could even be on a university website or something like that. And I'm like, that's interesting. And I go and write my comment, and then I actually put in a link to my own blog, that kind of thing. So it's time consuming. Again, I like blogging, and I think once you start blogging, you get quicker at it, you get better at it. But, it is time consuming. But sometimes I suppose you have to measure do you want 1 million people to view it, or do you want 10 people to view it who are interested in it? I'd rather have 10 people that are interested in it than 1 million people that are just going to skim read it and not care about it.
Because you're looking at, why have you made the blog in the first post, or why have you, created the video on social media, right? To have maybe, a new audience or new volunteers or new partners to come on board. So, those that are actually engaged are much more likely to take action from that. No, it's really, really interesting. And you mentioned something there about commenting on other people's posts, right? So if let's just say, as an example, we're talking about Uganda. So if you're a nonprofit in Uganda and there's, international NGOs also operating in Uganda, and they post something that is similar to your thematic area, why couldn't they comment? And if they can add value to the discussion, then you have a much larger audience going towards that LinkedIn or Twitter page or X page, looking at that international NGO, right? But then they might see and pick interest from the comment from the smaller community-based organization, for example. It could be a great way to tap into a new network, as you mentioned.
Totally. And that's something that I do on LinkedIn quite regularly. Not as much as I'd like to, but I saw somebody the other day that he's an academic in London, writes about similar stuff to me. When we're publishing papers, we often cite each other because there's similarities. But I saw that he got an event in London. I commented, "I hope the event goes well. I've got a new piece of research coming out soon that you might be interested in." It's just a very slight nudge of, I hope it goes well, but also, I'll send you the link soon. And it wasn't sort of over advertising, but it was just letting him know that I'm still following him and that I've got something coming out soon that he might be interested in. So I actually think commenting on whether it's X or LinkedIn or Instagram is as important in creating that own networking community than it is posting content yourself. And that's when I used to, I really don't use X anymore. I'm sorry. I think it's really gone downhill since Elon Musk has taken over. But I used to have 12, 13,000 followers, something like that. And I used to post regularly. But what I used to do is I used to create information that I thought my followers would be interested in. And I know that I was followed by the UNDP, by UNICEF, by WaterAid, by Oxfam, massive organisations, as well as senior people in those organisations. So the head of the UNDP followed me. I've had Melinda Gates follow me, Bill Gates' partner, and I've had direct message conversations with them. But it was because I was curating something that was it was interesting. I was sharing stuff that I thought my followers would be interested in. So there are ways of building networks, not just through your own content, but by being a curator of other people's content, really.
Yeah, no, fascinating. And I want to ask a question. I don't know the truth in this, but I read something about the golden hour. I think this was specifically for LinkedIn. So when you make a post, they push it out to a certain percentage of your follower base and test for, whether it's quality content or not. So did that percentage really interact? And I was reading that it's all about the first hour of whether then the machine pushes it out to a larger audience. Because I've been looking recently and I've saw people, I guess it depends where your audience is as well, geographically and time zone wise, because I've seen people that are in the UK and they're posting Saturday night, 3 a.m. And it's obviously no one's on LinkedIn at that time. So have you ever looked into or done any research into when is the best time to post during the week or when strategically to schedule posts? Because I know there's a lot of, even on the platforms themselves, you can schedule for a particular time in the future.
Okay, I'm going to say two things about that. Number one, beware of scheduling posts. So when I do lectures on sort of practical use of social media, there's a famous case study in the UK by one of the biggest supermarkets here called Tesco's. Tesco had planned a tweet to go out that evening saying we're now off to hit the hay. If people haven't heard that phrase before, that just means I'm off to bed. Hit the hay. Anyway, that day, somebody had forgotten to take down that scheduled tweet, and it was a day that a scandal broke out in the UK that somebody found out, don't know how, but they found out that their beef burgers were actually horse meat. So this was called the Tesco horse meat scandal. And so that was a very unfortunate event, but people thought that they were ridiculing the people that were outraged that they'd been eating horse and not beef. And they thought that, Tesco are having a laugh here. They're saying we're hitting the hay, but it wasn't. It was accidental. So beware of scheduling tweets or any kind of posts whatsoever on social media. But time. Okay, there was one day I was taking my kids swimming on a Sunday, and one of them, this was when they were quite young, one of them had forgotten their goggles or something. I think I'd already got out of the pool a couple of times. I was cold. So I decided to get out, went to the cafe. And at the time, my students were looking for placements. And I knew that I had a big following in Uganda. And so I tweeted and I said, does anybody in Uganda know of any placement opportunities for a student that's interested in blah, 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 blah. And I had this absolutely massive return. Loads of people responded to me. And I was like, why is that? So the next time I went to Uganda, I had that discussion. It was a Sunday morning. It was around about 10 o'clock. In Uganda, it would have been later, I think. And so they were saying a lot of people in Uganda tend to go to church early on a Sunday morning, and then they relax with their family. It's their downtime. It's the one day when they've got downtime. And that's why I got 25 responses instead of the usual 1 or 2 responses. So yeah, you're completely right. It's about knowing what the audience is doing at that time of day. So in the UK, a lot of people say that you should share stuff on a Friday afternoon because people are sort of like, still at work, but maybe thinking about the weekend and looking on social media. As far as the golden hour, I'm afraid I can't give you that answer. But there certainly is the better times to tweet or post, or I keep saying tweet, I'm sorry. I mean post on social media.
That's fascinating. So I guess it depends what country, and it really depends on a lot of things. That's really, really interesting. Well, David, it's been an amazing episode, and I think our audience will take a lot of value from this. Now, there's one final question that I ask to all of my guests, and it's if you had your own social impact journal and you could write one page, and for this particular page, it was a piece of advice for a non-profit that was just starting out their journey and looking about how to use social media, what would you say to them?
I'd say start and don't be too scared of failing. Don't do anything controversial, because people, even if you delete a post, people can screenshot it. But equally, don't be too scared. You most of the time, everything, you'll never get any negative feedback. But if you do get negative feedback, make sure that you respond to that appropriately. But yeah, don't be scared. But the other thing I think is, don't just hire an intern, because interns leave. And I've seen so many small NGOs hire interns, then they leave and they go from a really, really active account to no account whatsoever. And then lastly, don't ever give the job of managing social media to someone who isn't interested in social media. I've just passed on our social media, as I said, in the School of Global Development, because I've got a lot of commitments at the moment. I'm getting older. Maybe I don't know our student audience as well. So I've handed it over to somebody who's much younger than me, has got fresh ideas. I'm burnt out, possibly. And so give it to somebody who's got that passion, because it's not 24/7, but there is an expectation that you respond to things pretty quickly on social media. So you have to have that passion. If you're not interested in it, then don't bother.
For sure. Well, David, for everyone that's watching on YouTube, you can see David's social media channels that have been running through the bottom of the screen. For everyone that's listening through audio, they will be in the show notes, along with David's blog, The Social Media for Development. Thank you, David, for your time, and looking forward to catching up soon.
Pleasure, Jack. Great to see you again. Thanks.